Oh, feel the power.
Oh, I can feel it.
Our moment of triumph approaches! It's
Rock Talk.
This morning's reading comes from the Book of Codavilla, Chapter 1. While Europeans are accustomed to being ruled by presumed betters, whom they distrust, the American people's realization of being ruled in the same way shocked this country into well-nigh revolutionary attitudes. But only the realization was new. The ruling class had sunk deep roots in America decades before 2008. Machiavelli compares serious political diseases to the Aetolian fevers, easy to treat early on when they are difficult to discern, but virtually untreatable by the time they become obvious. America's disease is all the more deadly for being bipartisan. Republican and Democratic office holders and their retinues share a similar presumption to dominate and show fewer differences in tastes, habits, opinions, and sources of income among one another than between both and the rest of the country. They think, look, and act as a class, almost as a caste. Although after the election of 2008, most Republican office holders argued against the Troubled Asset Relief Program, against the subsequent bailouts of the auto industry, against several stimulus bills and further summary expansions of government power to benefit clients of government at the expense of ordinary citizens, the American people had every reason to believe that many Republican politicians were doing so simply by the logic of partisan opposition. After all, Republicans have been happy enough to approve of similar things under Republican administrations. Differences between Bush's, Clinton's, and Obama's are of degree, not kind. Moreover, the 2009-2010 establishment Republicans sought only to modify the government's agenda, while showing eagerness to join the Democrats in new grand schemes, if only they were allowed to. Senator Orrin Hatch continued to dream of being Ted Kennedy, while Lindsey Graham set aside what is true or false about global warming for the sake of getting on what he imagined to be the right side of history. No prominent Republican challenged the ruling class's continued claim of superior insight, nor its denigration of the American people as irritable children who must learn their place. The Republican Party did not disparage the ruling class, because most of its officials are or would like to be part of it. The polls quantify what any observant person can see. The division between the ruling class and the country class has overwhelmed that between Republicans and Democrats. When pollsters ask the American people whether they are likely to vote Republican or Democrat in the next presidential election, Republicans win growing pluralities. But whenever pollsters add the preferences undecided, none of the above, or Tea Party, these win handily. The Democrats come in second, and the Republicans trail far behind. That's because while most of the voters who call themselves Democrats say that Democratic officials represent them well, only a fourth of the voters who identify themselves as Republicans say the same about the Republican office holders. Hence, our rulers, both Democrats and Republicans, gladden the hearts of some one-third of the electorate, most Democrat voters, plus a few Republicans. This means that Democrat politicians are the ruling class prime legitimate representatives, and that because Republican politicians are supported by only a fourth of their voters while the rest vote for them reluctantly, most are aspirants for a junior role in the ruling class. In short, the ruling class has a party, the Democrats. But some two-thirds of Americans, a few Democratic voters, most Republican voters, and all independents lack a vehicle in electoral politics. Sooner or later, well or badly, that majority's demand for representation will be filled. Today, few speak well of the ruling class. Not only has it burgeoned in size and pretense, but it also has undertaken wars it has not won, presided over a declining economy and a ballooning debt, made life more expensive, raised taxes, and talked down to the American people. Hence, in recent years, America's conviction that the ruling class is as hostile as it is incompetent has solidified. The polls tell us that only about a fifth of Americans trust the government to do the right thing. The rest expect that it will do more harm than good, and are no longer afraid to say so. The two classes have less in common culturally, dislike each other more, and embody ways of life more different from one another than did the 19th century's Northerners and Southerners, nearly all of whom, as Lincoln reminded them, prayed to the same God. By contrast, while most Americans pray to the God who hath created and doth sustain us, our ruling class prays to itself as saviors of the planet and improvers of humanity.
Need more Grok Talk? Well, you can catch new shows Saturday mornings from 9 to 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Miss a show? Not a problem. Past shows are rebroadcast here daily from 9 to 11 a.m. Monday through Friday. Join us for 2 hours of unapologetic conservatism. And we're not just armed with opinions.
Rock Talk.
2, 1.
We'd like to welcome you to another edition of Grok Talk, brought to you by New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GraniteGrok.com. We are your feared extremist, right-wing, hard-charging, gun-toting, opinionated, outspoken, rabble-rousing, letter-writing, radio microphone stomping conservatives and rational libertarians. So get ready for more news and opinion you could only get from GraniteGrok.com.
Grok Talk.
All right, so right out of the gate, I need to buy a backup power supply and leave it here in the office, in the studio, because I forgot mine, and I was doing my newsread this morning with my laptop in the kitchen, so I didn't have my power supply connected, which meant when I got here, I didn't have 3 hours or 2 hours. I had less than an hour of power. So anybody listening on Spreaker or NHCRTheRock.com, the show is going to drop off Spreaker sometime in the first hour, and I apologize for that, but you can go to GraniteGrok.com. The video live stream is up and working, and you can watch the show that way. And when I get home, I will complete the podcast and post that, and you'll be able to listen to that throughout the week. So anyway, welcome to Grok Talk. What of it there is. It's an inclusive internal sort of Grokster sort of show this week. We have Susan Olsen here as our guest host, and we're going to talk about a host of issues with the lovely Susan Olsen. And, of course, we have Skip Murphy on the phone somewhere. I got to find the right button. Hey, Skip, you there?
I am here.
Hey there. All right. And so everybody's on board. Let's turn the music off and save some power. Mike Rogers is in Skip's chair commanding the video. And so here we go. We can start with the newsread. Obviously, there are lots of parallels in New Hampshire, which kind of lead us to the first topic that we were going to discuss, which is this week. The ruling class in the Judicial Committee, the Justice Committee, overwhelmingly, at least with a majority anyway, voted to advance Medicaid expansion, another version, I believe. Is that correct?
Actually, it's the Finance Committee, but I guess they might as
Yeah,
well be
it was the Finance
it was
Committee.
Finance,
swinging
right.
the gavel.
Okay.
But,
Something's in justice this week, and I can't remember what it is. I
It
have them
was-
Well, that's
confused.
better than what Trump was swinging.
Well, it was shocking, I suppose, unless you are part of that ruling class, unless you don't stand in that committee room and look at the folks who are seated, because they're all lobbyists of some persuasion or the other. There were very few normal people in the audience, and they all were sitting there with their hands out, and if their hands weren't out, they were in your pocket. So it was an interesting. I know the legislature believes it has to go through the motions, okay, and put on this public display of yes, we're examining. First, it went to Health and Human Services, which was the policy committee, right, to decide whether or not little old Joe LaChance, who is the flag bearer for the establishment, in extending, reauthorizing Medicaid expansion for another 2 years, because, oh my goodness, it's going to expire in December of this year, and all those poor people were going to get dropped off the welfare rolls. So we have to have another 2 years to see whether or not the first 2 years, cost so much money that the state couldn't afford to take it into perpetuity. So passed the policy committee without even a hiccup. Only one vote against it. So it went on to the Finance Committee, chaired by Neil Kirk. Also at the head of the table were Ken Weiler, Lynn Ober, a number of other folks. And they went through the motions, God bless them, of saying, really, are you really going to steal from people? Are you really going to put your children and grandchildren into chains and eternal servitude to, I guess, make look respectable the money laundering that truly is Medicaid expansion? And they voted 18-8. Yes, that's exactly what we're going to do, but we're not going to call it that. We're going to talk about the least vulnerable among us, which includes some 50,000 able-bodied, childless.
The most vulnerable amongst us, I presume they mean.
Well, Yeah, I suppose it's.
Oh, they're not really.
They're not. No, they're not. They're not. They just happen to be able-bodied, childless adults who, in the correct world, would never have qualified for Medicaid because they're neither truly poor, truly disabled, truly in need of help, and which is what we're supposed to do as a society. So it was a big sham, and watching the committee members' faces, hearing from the hospital association who never provided a straight answer, and listening to members from these various individual hospitals, and listening to the Department of Health and Human Services say these things that were beyond incredible, and everybody in the audience is nodding, and the committee members around the table didn't leap out of their chairs and take the witnesses by the throats and haul them off to jail. It's beyond incredible. So it passed 18-8. It will go to the floor on, I presume, this coming Wednesday or Thursday, because they had to finish in time to get it on the calendar to get to the House vote. So it'll pass. There's no question. And then it'll go to the Senate, and they'll do this same sort of Star Chamber. You know, we're all winking and nudging each other and going, yeah, this is really important. And it'll pass. And there we go. And expanded Medicaid will be written into law forever and ever. Amen.
You mean, by Star Chamber, you mean the one containing our gubernatorial hopeful, the Executive Council, no? Or is it?
Oh, no! In fact, on the 10th of February at the Executive Council meeting, it's if you truly are into self-flagellation, I guess, you look at the agenda, and it's this very nice typed-out agenda on their website. And for each agenda item, there's a hyperlink. Mm-hmm. And if you go to the hyperlink, you can see what the individual documents are. Or you can download the whole set of documents for any particular Executive Council meeting.
Is this the 2,000-page thing you were?
Well, it's 2,612 pages, actually.
Isn't that about the same size as Obamacare?
I thought Obamacare was bigger than that. But nevertheless,
well, it is now.
For this particular one Executive Council meeting, there were 2,612 pages of accompanying documentation for them to, I guess they get it that morning maybe, to look at as they go through the items for voting. But in that 2,612 pages, there were 2 pages from the Department of Health and Human Services that increased the amount of money that would be coming in via Medicaid from $600 and maybe $17 million to $619 million. And I'm sorry I didn't bring it with me.
So a small increase.
$4 million chump change. But happily, you will note that in the spreadsheet contained, or the slice of spreadsheet contained in that 2-page letter, there's $4,000 set aside for an audit. So we can be sure that that all of this stuff is going to be audited and documented and made available to the public. So, my goodness gracious, the fix, and whether it's a heroin fix or a fentanyl fix or whatever, the fix is in, ladies and gentlemen. And
like most fixes, it will wear off and leave you with an overhang.
Well, it won't leave the ruling class with a hangover, because
they're all going to be happy.
They never run out of dope.
They're going to put it on their resume. I expanded Medicaid.
Yeah.
You know, they can run around the country like Kasich and proudly wave their I expanded Medicaid flag.
That's right. So. And one of the members of the Executive Council, who is, I believe, a gubernatorial hopeful, is in favor of expanded Medicaid. I mean, a Republican, alleged Republican.
Yeah, and this would be,
yeah,
guys.
Go ahead.
This would be Frank Edelblut, right?
No. This is Chris Sununu.
Oh, Chris Sununu on the Executive Council.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
But, you have to remember, too, Frank Edelblut, who is also looking to run for governor, had expressed great effort, not effort, but admiration for expanding Medicaid expansion.
You would be wrong, Skip. He voted against it, and some of the questions that he posed to the witnesses were the things that we would ask. Like, are you freaking kidding me?
Right.
Although he didn't say that, but the same type of pointed, really trying to get an answer. So, no, I think Mr. Edelblu has, once he got into it and really looked at it, realizes the unalterable damage that this is going to do to New Hampshire and its way of life.
Understood, and I did read that, but he did that after, when he was, although, I'm sorry, I'm mangling my words this morning, folks, but he was for it earlier. I had a couple of phone calls with him. He was tremendously in favor of it, and I'm glad to see he's had the change of heart. Unfortunately, it seemed to be a little late, and not
better late than never,
and not persuasive enough to persuade the rest of the ruling class to do otherwise. It certainly does sound that this whole effort has safely ensconced the Republican Party as being the junior lackeys of the welfare state, headed up by the Democrats once again. I mean, do these guys have a clue as to who they're supposed to be, or do they not care?
I don't think it matters. You need to understand that this whole scheme, this whole Ponzi scheme, which actually isn't a Ponzi scheme because they're all willing collaborators, has been around, and it was instituted by a Republican governor by the name of Judd Gregg. He's the guy that came up with it, and it went on for 20-some-odd years.
This is the hospital kickback scheme.
Yes, this is the disproportionate share and the Medicaid enhancement tax. It was all great until, I guess it was 2013, and what was it Darth Vader said to Lando Calrissian?
I'm altering the deal. Pray I don't alter it further.
Yeah, well, they altered the deal, and the hospitals all of a sudden decided that their ox was being gored. So it's only in the last couple of years that anybody turned this rock over and looked at the deal. So it's horrible. It's horrible. It's kabuki theater. Anybody that believes that anything can be done to change this is probably someone who has a job and a family and works and pays bills and trusts their elected officials to look after them.
And isn't this the reason why, to tie it back to the news read of the reading of Codavia, we see lots of people, ordinary folks, fly over country rebelling against the ruling elite, this political class of all persuasions and parts of the aisle, and voting for people that one would never think would even get a shot at being voted for, because the people are revolting.
Yep. People are revolting. All right, we're going to take a break.
I
since we
think
just
the
dropped
politicians are revolting, but not in the same.
Is he still on? Can you check? Call him back.
Skip, you still there?
Hello.
All right, I'll put him on audition. You give him a buzz. We'll take a quick break. This is Grok Talk. We still have music, at least for another 60 seconds or so stay tuned.
This is a coalition of New Hampshire taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is the repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested, riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at gerardatlarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
Need more Grok Talk? Well, you can catch new shows Saturday mornings from 9 to 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Miss a show? Not a problem. Past shows are rebroadcast here daily from 9 to 11 a.m. Monday through Friday. Join us for 2 hours of unapologetic conservatism. And we're not just armed with opinions. All right. Grog Talk with music still. See how long that lasts. So, Miss Susan would like to read something relative to the topic.
Well, actually, this after doing a lot of looking and reading and studying and issuing right-to-know requests, many of which are still unanswered, I came up with a piece from the Josiah Bartlett Center. And anyone listening and who is concerned or wants to understand what really happened and why there's nothing we can do about it, if you go to Josiah Bartlett's website and look up an article from 2013 called Meet the Met, M-E-T, which is a Medicaid enhancement tax. That's the deal that got altered, right? And caused all the trouble. So let me read you the summary, and then there's a couple of things within here that I'd like to read because I want to make sure that I get this exactly correct. So the summary here, the Medicaid enhancement tax. New Hampshire adopted the Medicaid enhancement tax as a means to leverage federal matching funds without imposing any real tax liability on hospitals. Now, you can dissect that sentence any way you want. But after 2 decades, budget writers finally ended the practice that became known as Metascam by turning this phantom tax into a real one. Faced with a new multi-million-dollar tax liability, New Hampshire hospitals took the state to court and started paying closer attention to how much they owed. As the legislature struggles to understand a huge source of state revenue that went without much oversight for 20 years, how they change the Medicaid enhancement tax will have expensive implications for state budget and state hospitals for years to come. This paper will outline the history, blah, blah, blah. Now, the disproportionate share payment, which is part of this. It says here, under the federal Medicaid program, participating states, split the cost for providing health care to low-income recipients with the feds. Most states, including New Hampshire, elect to reimburse hospitals for treatment based on a fee-for-service model. Reimbursement rates are set by state officials but must be approved by CMS. Now, in New Hampshire began making disproportionate share payments, that's what this is called, in fiscal year 1992 during Judd Gregg's administration. At the same time, it imposed a new revenue stream to pay for them. The Medicaid enhancement tax was a 6% levy on hospitals' gross patient service revenue, essentially every dollar charged for patient care at all 28 New Hampshire hospitals. Every state was designated a disproportionate share hospital and captured both Medicaid expansion tax and disproportionate share hospitals. For example, if a hospital owed $10 million under this Medicaid enhancement tax that was brought under Judd Gregg, it would send its payment to the state, which would send a reimbursement payment to the same hospital later that same day. The federal government would soon get an application for the amount of money that the state sent to the hospital, a matching grant, which would be deposited directly in New Hampshire's general fund. So let's think about it. Under Medicaid expansion tax, if you're the Elliott Hospital, which is so ably represented by volunteer board member Joe LaChance, you got a Medicaid enhancement tax bill of, let's say, $100. Mm-hmm. Okay, you paid that $100 to the state. The state immediately turned around and gave you $50 back, right? The state then sent a bill to the feds showing that they had paid you $50 mm-hmm. for your disproportionate share costs. The feds would then give match that $50. They'd give that money back to the state of New Hampshire. New Hampshire then gave that $50 back to the hospitals and made them whole. So the hospitals never lost any money.
But the state was up $50, which they had stolen from the feds by false pretenses.
It wasn't from the feds. The feds were stealing it from us.
Wow.
But it was the deal. That was the deal until Lando Calrissian came along and said, "You know what,
Bill O'Brien,
we're gonna alter the terms of the deal." So they didn't automatically get all of that money back. That was, in fact, a tax.
Mm-hmm.
And they were not refunded 100%, even though perhaps the state got the money back and kept it. So there's been a big fight going on. And enter, if you will, expanded Medicaid, or Medicaid expansion, which originally was mandatory under Obamacare.
Right, but the states proved that it wasn't, in fact, mandatory, and a bunch of them decided to stiff the feds.
Well, they proved it was unconstitutional.
Yeah.
But then it became voluntary. So participation in voluntary expanded Medicaid was the norm. So expanded Medicaid sought to capture a whole different population than the original Medicaid, which rightly, wrongly, or indifferently, and has gotten out of hand, was really originally intended to help the truly poor.
It's like a big have-a-heart trap.
Exactly. But now there's blood on the floor, okay, where there wasn't before. So the original Medicaid really sought to help children, poor children, the truly disabled, the truly poor, and give them some sort of, I hate the phrase, but safety net.
And in this case, people who weren't being cared for by others, family members or whatever.
Yeah. And you know, if we think that that's the right thing to do, if government should be covering that cost, then that was the original intent of Medicaid. Certainly it's been abused, but expanded Medicaid said, well, you know what? There's people out there that maybe we ought to help too. And it was turned out to be, quote, the mentally ill and those with substance abuse issues. But the profile of the population that has been captured under expanded Medicaid are primarily able-bodied, childless adults who aren't working or are working, maybe part-time or a job here or there to pay for their bad habits. So New Hampshire has enrolled, since the passage of expanded Medicaid, some 50,000 people who now get this same sort of, quote, free money from the feds, and this in the same fashion it's being laundered through state government. And these people, the state will say, well, you know, we're having them, we're helping them get private insurance, right, so they can attend to their needs, their health needs.
But they don't.
Well, maybe they do, maybe they don't. But the idea is, you know what? Now this has reduced this disproportionate share cost that hospitals had been experiencing because, since they altered the terms of the deal, they weren't getting covered for all of their out-of-pocket or charitable care, which every single one of these guys, with the exception of two, are 501c3 fully tax-exempt hospitals. So they're exempt from any tax. And the basis for that exemption is they are charities, and they're supposed to be providing charitable care to their population. But
quick heads up, we're gonna to Spreaker listeners and anybody on NHCRTheRock.com, please go to GraniteRock.com and start watching the video live stream because the audio is going to drop any minute. Please proceed. Any minute.
So these hospitals are getting a fair majority of their charitable expenses covered already, and because the tax, the Medicaid expansion tax, is in fact a, quote, real one to the hospitals, it appears that they have increased their costs or charges because that lowers the exposure of their patient revenue stream to the tax. So it's a bit of a bigger scam, but nevertheless, the DHHS and the legislature and all these folks saying disproportionate share costs have dropped dramatically because they've laundered money from another source in the form of, quote, private insurance to cover the alleged costs of this less than vulnerable population who walk into the emergency room because they've, I don't know, overdosed on whatever.
Bath salts.
Bath salts, perhaps. So it's a willing co-conspiracy in the state of New Hampshire, and we're the suckers. So,
man, that's complicated.
Well, but isn't that what politicians say when issues are difficult? They say, well, that's a complex issue.
Because they've made it so. Because they've made the money crisscross and go round and round instead of keeping it simple.
Yeah, I mean, used to be in the old days when you were laundering things, you had two cycles. You had a hot water and a cold water cycle. But if you look at washing machines today, oh my God, you can program to do almost anything. So money laundering has become much more complicated,
including wrap it in foil and put it in your freezer for you,
and technical. But this is truly, this is nothing more than money laundering. And what's truly frightening and should frighten listeners is when you look at the revenue sources. For the state of New Hampshire. New Hampshire, with the taxes that it does impose, collects in New Hampshire just about 60% of what it spends. The rest of that money is taken from taxpayers here and other states, sent to Washington, and then they divide it up and send it back.
How do we claim that this is a donor state if, in fact, 40% of our budget comes from federal tax monies? Unless, of course, the federal taxes paid by our citizens are more than that 40%.
Well, we do still have an above-average annual income in the state of New Hampshire. It used to be one of the highest. I don't know if it still is.
It's what, 61,000?
62,000.
61,000. Yeah. But the funny thing is, they say, well, we're just getting our tax dollars back. Well, let me ask you a question. Have either of you gotten any of those tax dollars back?
No.
Mike? Skip? No. You there?
I am.
Did you get any of those tax dollars back?
Of course not, but that is just like the...
We totally lost your volume.
But, I mean, it's the same old thing, that whole phrase of the most vulnerable among us. We have to get our tax dollars back. They're both equivalent covers for the same thing. And you look at this, and, I haven't posted it yet, but both our senators, Ayotte and Shaheen, went to hat in hand to ask for another $600 million more. And I look at that as an absolute affront. Because they're fleecing federal taxpayers to be able to pay for this. And yet here, to be able to bring that back to New Hampshire, even as the folks here with Medicaid expansion are saying, hey, we need Medicaid expansion so we can solve our opiate crisis. It's like, I'm sorry, get your acts together, except they both just don't seem to understand, we're getting this free money so that New Hampshire taxpayers won't have to foot the bill. Well, last time I looked, most of the people that I see around me, and probably all those people who were lobbying as well, Susan, as you went to these hearings, are all federal taxpayers, and I bet you not.
There you go again.
There he goes again.
Well,
yeah, there he goes again. We're not going to cut you off, Skip. Speak up when you can hear us properly. Your audio got interrupted. You're going to have problems with your cable company.
Well,
Wait, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, so, I look at this and I just get utterly frustrated. And again, back to the newsread of the
You're gone again. Yeah, back to the newsread.
Well, as part of this research yesterday, I stumbled across something called DSRIP, which I don't remember the full acronym, but this is a $150 million.
The drip with an S in it.
The drip with an S in it.
Water torture.
It's $150 million that was announced January the 5th of this year that's supposed to be used for all sorts of innovative programs and management for substance abuse and mental illness problems. And I'm thinking January 5th, Well, it turns out that it's another waiver, quote, that the state gets. So when you look at the timing of last November's, oh my God, we got to have a special session to address substance abuse when they'd been stealing from the alcohol fund all these years. The November special session apparently was necessary to get laws staged to have this January 5th draft approval or tentative approval for this other $150 million that's coming in for substance abuse. Now, the recipients of this $150 million are not the hospitals, but they're local organizations, the Seacoast whatever, all these various community groups that are getting paid off as well. So it's staggering the amount of money that gets sloshed around that purportedly legislators are bringing back to the state of New Hampshire, but they damn sure don't give it to any of us. They give it to people who didn't pay taxes in the first place. So I'm getting a little tired of this, quite frankly.
Well, and me too. And I am beginning to think that the only answer here is for New Hampshireites to go galt effectively, and to downsize. I mean, much as it pains us in this country, where we should be living the highest standard of living in the world and increasing, it's time to maybe voluntarily reduce or simplify our standard of living so that we have to earn less and we pay less. And so that the inflation, which they keep hitting us with, the hidden costs of the Federal Reserve, doesn't impact us so badly. I mean, I know that I'm finding it much harder to keep up with my expenses than I was a few years ago, and I'm looking at downsizing. And if enough people go galt, or at least half galt, and reduce what they're paying to the government, this whole edifice is going to come tumbling down.
Well, I know you had Emily Sandblade on a couple of weeks ago talking about the New Hampshire income tax calculator. And as we were studying expanded Medicaid, we had stumbled across this. I'm sure she talked about the LSR that a Democrat representative from Concord, Paul Henley, had a marker he'd set aside that was relative to, quote, a New Hampshire income tax. He pulled that LSR and it didn't go to legislation, but he substituted a website called www.newhampshiretaxshift.com that laid out this plan that actually was revenue neutral, but he says, we need to stop relying on property taxes to fund our state government. And so what he did with the same pair of pants, he changed the pockets, and he eliminated a number of taxes that the Department of Revenue Administration administers, one of which was the statewide education property tax, which is statutorily set at $363 million or something. And if you look on your bill that you get from the town, there's a little thing that says statewide property tax, and it's, I don't know, $2, somewhere $1.90 to
per thousand,
to $2.60, depending upon where you are, per thousand value against your house. And he's saying, we're going to lower your property tax. Well, there isn't anybody in New Hampshire that doesn't say, Yahoo, I want to lower my property tax. So it's a bit disingenuous, because on his site, he doesn't call it the statewide education property tax. He calls it the statewide property tax.
But we're going to take a really short break, because I think we still can. But the point with that is he's taking a tax that's visible and trying to make it invisible.
Oh, you have no idea.
Okay, we'll be right back. Hopefully this works. You will probably drop out off speaker during this little audio break, but come right back. GraniteRock.com. We're there.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested, riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW, New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at GerardAtLarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
This is the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is the repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
Need more Grok Talk? Well, you can catch new shows Saturday mornings from 9 to 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Miss a show? Not a problem. Past shows are rebroadcast here daily from 9 to 11 a.m. Monday through Friday. Join us for 2 hours of unapologetic conservatism. And we're not just armed with opinions.
I confess I'm surprised I still have music. Any minute now, it's gone. It's gonna
burn down that GOP and dance in the smoke.
All right, so just so you know, we're not going to just talk about Medicaid. Lots of things happened this week. We'll get to probably Super Tuesday debate. Union leader Christy Carson's out. Trump snubs CPAC. Rubens is challenging Ayotte. If he loses the primary, Stark 360 will run Andrew Hemingway in the general to steal votes to get her out of Washington. A couple people were arrested this week. We have Trans-glaciers to talk about.
We have Trans-glaciers.
We have Trans-glaciers to talk about. Important. And then maybe if we have time later, we'll talk about vandalism in Rhode Island. But anyway.
Those damn trees.
Which was just too funny. Too funny. That is so... Oh, we'll talk about it later. All right. So thank you, Spreaker people. NHCR the Rock people. I'm serious. We really are. I'm like at 2%. I'm close to 2%. My laptop's going to shut off. I'm going to lose my Spreaker stream. Please go to granicrock.com and watch the video Ustream. Now you can see me. Hello. Right there. So let's tie this up.
Yeah.
With a neat little bow, and then next hour we'll move on to other things.
The short version is there is no way, number one, to stop the reauthorization of expanded Medicaid. There's no way to do it. And worse, there's absolutely no way to pay for it except through a sales or income tax, because I'm guessing state government is not going to cut spending to cover the gap.
Not the current legislature.
No. And I don't know any future legislature that would.
Yeah, we would have to completely change our pants.
Indeed, we would have to change our pants.
Pockets and all.
So just be prepared when the time comes that you're going to have to, unless, of course, you work in Massachusetts and the tax is still higher than what it will be in New Hampshire, you're going to be paying an income tax to pay for all of this stuff. So
that covers it.
Yeah, bad stuff, bad stuff.
We are. And it is a scheme, and you've outlined it pretty well. And
but it's smiling and willing co-conspirators. That's what's so shocking.
And what's the
website?
website?
Everybody knew about it.
Expand NH.
Yes, you can go to www.expandnh.org. Make sure it's the .org. You can download the tax calculator. You can also download lists of what we called Republicans behaving badly on the votes, which has since been updated to include the vote in Senate Finance. But bear in mind that a numerical majority, superiority of Republicans in the New Hampshire House wasn't enough. It only took 65 alleged Republicans to join with 100% of the Democrats to pass this. It will not be stopped. So, hold on to your wallets, ladies and gentlemen, and I guess turn your head and cough. Sorry.
You're going to have a tax hernia, so just
get used to it. Whether it's sales or income, it's coming.
All right, now let's do Trans-glaciers next hour. Because that is just too damn funny, and we want to spend some time on that.
I just don't think about these things.
Right.
I'm glad there's...
we have a few minutes to get through this, though. Jerry DeLemus was seized by the FBI and arrested and indicted for his Bundy activities. He's going to have another hearing on Monday. You can reach out to Jack Kimball if that's something that interests you, because he's kind of been on the, paying a lot of attention to it. The other arrested person was Kyle Tasker. He was arrested for possession with intent to sell, and soliciting a minor for sex on the internet. Which, I mean, anybody who knows Kyle Tasker knows that he's abrasive and obnoxious, and he was a good vote in the legislature, but other than that, he's kind of a jerk, and that's fine. You can be as big of a jerk as you want if you're a good vote, because really all we care about is votes. This is different. This is a situation where
criminal and creepy activity
by a good vote is not good.
No.
It doesn't matter how good your votes are.
No.
This is something else entirely. And several police agencies were involved. Initially, people were like, oh, well, why did they just target him? Well, if you read the affidavit, if you read the police report, you know why they targeted him, because he solicited sex from a 14-year-old, and they did it again when the police sat down to pretend to be them. And so, he offered them drugs. He admitted to making money selling drugs to pay for his drugs. He made
Apparently he's quite a cook.
He made some very specific comments.
Meth labs,
yes, some very specific comments about sex with a minor. And so he's not in custody because I guess he
no canaries or coal mines involved.
Bail was paid or whatever.
They did? $250,000 cash?
$150,000 bond or something was.
No, it was cash. $250,000 cash.
I know. I read somewhere that somehow he was out on some kind of bond or something.
Wow, maybe.
But maybe that's not true.
I don't know.
But anyway, he's in a little bit of trouble.
Well, there's no way to fill that seat either because state law says that no special elections can be held after March 15 in the second year of a session.
And he
so
has
an empty seat.
He, of course, rightfully in this particular case, a number of people have said he should resign, but he doesn't need to until he is actually convicted.
Well, I suppose.
And even then, if he was a Democrat, he could still get reelected from jail.
Well, I think if I heard some of the interviews correctly, that the House does have the ability.
Oh, yes.
To remove him.
They can vote to remove him, and I suspect they will.
I suspect they will.
Because
I hope
this
they do.
particular legislature.
Yeah.
Is owned and operated by the Democrats, regardless of the majority.
Right, and they don't like Tasker. I mean, you may not.
I don't like Tasker.
As a person, but I mean, even just as a vote. A Liberty rating, 90 to 95% NHHRA. So he shows up and he votes for the right bills and he votes the right way, but.
At what cost?
At what cost? It is not worth this cost to have that vote.
God,
Absolutely,
no.
under no circumstances is this acceptable.
No.
And they should kick him out.
Yeah.
Because, especially if the police said, look, here's the evidence. And, I mean, they've written it in the report. We've seen it. If they actually have the hard evidence, and it's not just them saying they've seen it or somebody has related it to them, he's done.
Yeah.
Okay? Because there's no excuse for this.
No. No, there's not.
So, our apologies to Tasker apologists. But he was a militant atheist douchebag.
Yes,
and
I think
now
that
he's
it.
a militant atheist douchebag, apparently attempted sex offender with minors. A lot of people just were dismissive of the drug thing.
Yeah.
And I understand that because and somebody did say it's a real shame that this other crap was involved because we could have had a really good debate about the drug thing. And we could have had a good debate about the drug thing. We always frequently do, and there's nothing wrong with having that debate. Everybody's going to be on different sides of it, but this is way beyond that. This is awful.
Well, either we obey the law and work to change it.
Correct.
Or we just respect the laws that we like, and then that just makes us Democrats.
Right.
So what he was doing with drugs, or alleged to be doing with drugs, was and is illegal.
Yes, it is.
So whether you like the law or not, until it's changed, it is the law. So get over that, folks. Come on.
It is.
Come on.
Oh, and that's very true, and that's the whole thing. I mean, you're supposed to work within the system and within the process, and it's not beyond working within the process, except for Medicaid expansion. And
that's all legal.
It's all legal. It is all legal.
Yeah.
That's just it, and that's what some people say, well, it shouldn't be.
We're at
Oh, sorry, you put your headset down, so I turned you on.
We're at the point where the old truism is really coming out here. Don't steal, the government hates competition, because essentially this is legalized theft and money laundering, which the government is doing to a very large extent. Yeah. And it's no longer just the Democrat money laundering of stealing from union members to support Democrat candidates. This is wholesale governmental money laundering, aided and abetted by both parties who are getting fat off it.
And it's not too many steps.
Computer's down.
It's not too many steps above check kiting.
Yeah, it's pretty close too.
Because at some point,
yeah, that's true. That's true.
You look at the timing.
Yeah.
And when I was a sophomore in college, which is when dinosaurs walked the earth, and you still had paper checks, and this was long before this anything other than bank wires and things like that. Mm-hmm. I had a professor that explained to us how to kite checks. And he says what you do is you open a bank account in New York, and you open one in Seattle, and maybe you open one in Brownsville. And with a check written on the bank in Seattle, you open an account and you deposit $1,000, okay? And the bank on the East Coast thinks you have $1,000, and you just keep that. It's like juggling. It's the same thing, kiting checks and juggling. As long as you can keep it all up in the air, it works. This is not going to end well. Medicaid expansion and Medicaid and all of this disproportionate share stuff is going to collapse. Mm-hmm. And just, you think the sky is falling with Chicken Little. It's going to get tough.
Yeah. At some point we should have John Stephen in to explain all of this stuff to us, because he knows how this stuff works mathematically better than almost anybody. He has aided and abetted states to maximize their take from Medicare and Medicaid, essentially.
Wasn't Greg Moore a policy analyst at DHHS?
Yes, he was.
Yes, he was.
He knows this too, I imagine.
He does.
Yeah.
We could certainly have him in.
But both of these guys are experts and have looked at it from the inside. As long as the federal government is bribing the states to do stuff, you may as well maximize your take. And
it's exactly what happened here.
Yeah, and one of John Stevens' areas of expertise is to analyze this for the states to make sure that they don't get shortchanged by the federal government. So
my grandfather used to say that
it's a perfectly justifiable profession, but not one that I'm particularly keen to see going on.
Yeah, well, my grandfather used to say that pigs get fat and hogs get killed. Mm-hmm. And greed, unfortunately, is fattening these pigs to the place to where they may end up as hogs and they may get slaughtered. So, and we are the unfortunate bystanders and innocent parties when all the flesh starts dropping. So.
Yeah,
ugly. But I would urge you, go to the Josiah Bartlett Center for Public Policy, Google the article Meet the Met, M-E-T. It's from 2013. Do not drink while you are reading this, at least not near anything electrical, or maybe have something to numb the pain. But it's shocking and eye-opening, and unless people understand what's being done to us, we can't stop it.
No.
But knowing the truth and being able to name what it is has some value.
Yeah, I mean, at all levels of government, it is legalized theft. And this has accelerated since 1913 when they stole our senators. They implemented a national income tax that allowed the federal government to steal the money with which to bribe the formerly sovereign states, and then they instituted the Federal Reserve to print and debase the currency, of which the first fallout was, of course, at the beginning of the Depression, when the gap between printing and reality became large enough that they had to confiscate all the gold and sell it back to you at a higher price. And it hasn't gotten any better since. And of course, Nixon liberated the dollar to sink into the black hole.
Yeah. Well, the shame of it is when people believe that their elected representatives truly have their interest at heart. All an elected representative should be doing is making sure that your liberty is expanded, not contracted.
Right, and the problem is that legislatures at all levels, even the little ones in the towns, want to be doing something. They want to be seen to be doing good. They want to be seen to be responding to Rahm Emanuel's crises, and all of that ends badly.
We're going to get a roundabout and a solar array.
How are those crises doing for Rahm right now? Even Democrats want him gone.
Yeah, I think he's in danger of being taken out by mobsters in the street in Chicago. It's not going well at all. But momentarily lost direction there.
Sorry, I derailed
your train of thought. You're just saying government at all levels want to be seen as doing something, and you're absolutely
yes, they
right.
do. So right. So what I like is the way the First Amendment opens. Government shall make no law. Stop right there.
That's enough.
Because most of the time there's no reason to make a law.
No.
And
well, now, unless you're Rhode Island.
Yeah, right.
Well, we'll come. I'll let
we will definitely be getting to that shortly.
I'll let Steve read that. Yeah, they've branched out into new territory, and all the residents want us to be leafed alone.
Ooh. You're
nice.
Needling them, aren't you?
They're pining for smaller regulations.
It's a new branch.
It's a new.
We'll have to tell you what it is.
They're looking for
what
cover.
A bunch of saps.
That's great.
I think we've beaten that bush.
Well, I think you're nuts.
Oh, pine cones.
Yeah.
All right, so we have 4 minutes left in this segment.
That's the whole point. Except for naturalization, immigration, trade, external, and treason, the federal government has no business making laws whatsoever.
I think they got the treason part down pretty well because they're committing it against their own people.
Yeah, but who gets to prosecute them?
We do not.
That's the point.
We do not.
We have laws that we can't use to prosecute them who are actually the traitors.
Well, it's our own fault.
Yes, it is.
It's our own fault.
Eternal vigilance and all that.
We get the government we deserve, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So you choose between paying your rent, paying your mortgage, feeding your kids, or fighting legislators.
Yeah.
How do you do that? I don't know. I suppose in New Hampshire, the simple fact that there are 400 people in the House. Yeah.
You can at least approach your local legislator and make them feel uncomfortable. But we do have problems at all levels. We got some good people running our local town, in that they are running it relatively efficiently and so on and so forth. But they still can't resist doing good. A piece of land comes up somewhere and they want a warrant article to add this to our open space. And give me a break. You're assuming everybody's as rich as you are.
Or some old family decides that, they want to leave a legacy and put their 1,000 acres, contiguous acres, into a conservation easement. When the fact of the matter is they don't want any damn neighbors. They don't want anybody building on it. They got enough money, and you put it into a conservation easement. They pay no tax on it.
Yeah.
And then if you decide that, well, I'm just a citizen of the town, and here's this wonderful conservation easement, and I'd like to go avail myself of the recreational opportunities, then they call the cops. So it's we're not crooked enough to participate. I'm afraid.
I think that's largely the case. Oh, Skip's sitting there silently.
I turned him off.
You turned Skip off, you meanie.
Was it Mark Twain that said politicians?
Oh no, he's gone away.
He is. We're going to hit the top of the hour in a second. I'm just going to play this music.
Oh, excellent.
And that way I'll be able to at least have a placeholder for when I do my edits.
Rock Talk.
Some of the content on this program is shared under the fair use provision of U.S. copyright law, found free in the public domain, or covered under Attribution 3.0. Some of the music on this program is provided by Kevin MacLeod at Incompetech.com. The opinions expressed on this program are those of the speakers and not necessarily those of CNHT, GraniteRock.com, this station, or anyone else for that matter. From the CNHT studios in Concord, New Hampshire, just a few blocks from the New Hampshire State House, this is
Rock Talk.
Oh, feel the power.
Oh, I can feel it.
Our moment of triumph approaches. It's
Rock Talk.
This morning's reading comes from the book of Codevilla, Chapter 1. While Europeans are accustomed to being ruled by presumed betters, whom they distrust, the American people's realization of being ruled in the same way shocked this country into well-nigh revolutionary attitudes. But only the realization was new. The ruling class had sunk deep roots in America decades before 2008. Machiavelli compares serious political diseases to the Aetolian fevers, easy to treat early on when they are difficult to discern, but virtually untreatable by the time they become obvious. America's disease is all the more deadly for being bipartisan. Republican and Democratic office holders and their retinues share a similar presumption to dominate and show fewer differences in tastes, habits, opinions, and sources of income among one another than between both and the rest of the country. They think, look, and act as a class, almost as a caste. Although after the election of 2008, most Republican office holders argued against the Troubled Asset Relief Program, against the subsequent bailouts of the auto industry, against several stimulus bills and further summary expansions of government power to benefit clients of government at the expense of ordinary citizens, the American people had every reason to believe that many Republican politicians were doing so simply by the logic of partisan opposition. After all, Republicans have been happy enough to approve of similar things under Republican administrations. Differences between Bush's, Clinton's, and Obama's are of degree, not kind. Moreover, the 2009-2010 establishment Republicans sought only to modify the government's agenda, while showing eagerness to join the Democrats in new grand schemes, if only they were allowed to. Senator Orrin Hatch continued to dream of being Ted Kennedy, while Lindsey Graham set aside what is true or false about global warming for the sake of getting on what he imagined to be the right side of history. No prominent Republican challenged the ruling class's continued claim of superior insight, nor its denigration of the American people as irritable children who must learn their place. The Republican Party did not disparage the ruling class, because most of its officials are or would like to be part of it. The polls quantify what any observant person can see. The division between the ruling class and the country class has overwhelmed that between Republicans and Democrats. When pollsters ask the American people whether they are likely to vote Republican or Democrat in the next presidential election, Republicans win growing pluralities. But whenever pollsters add the preferences undecided, none of the above, or Tea Party, these win handily. The Democrats come in second, and the Republicans trail far behind. That's because while most of the voters who call themselves Democrats say that Democratic officials represent them well, only a fourth of the voters who identify themselves as Republicans say the same about the Republican office holders. Hence, our rulers, both Democrats and Republicans, gladden the hearts of some one-third of the electorate, most Democrat voters, plus a few Republicans. This means that Democrat politicians are the ruling class prime legitimate representatives, and that because Republican politicians are supported by only a fourth of their voters while the rest vote for them reluctantly, most are aspirants for a junior role in the ruling class. In short, the ruling class has a party, the Democrats. But some two-thirds of Americans, a few Democratic voters, most Republican voters, and all independents lack a vehicle in electoral politics. Sooner or later, well or badly, that majority's demand for representation will be filled.
Today, few speak well of the ruling class.
Not only has it burgeoned in size and pretense, but it also has undertaken wars it has not won, presided over a declining economy and a ballooning debt, made life more expensive, raised taxes, and talked down to the American people. Hence, in recent years, America's conviction that the ruling class is as hostile as it is incompetent has solidified. The polls tell us that only about a fifth of Americans trust the government to do the right thing. The rest expect that it will do more harm than good and are no longer afraid to say so. The two classes have less in common culturally, dislike each other more, and embody ways of life more different from one another than did the 19th century's Northerners and Southerners, nearly all of whom, as Lincoln reminded them, prayed to the same God. By contrast, while most Americans pray to the God who hath created and doth sustain us, our ruling class prays to itself as saviors of the planet and improvers of humanity.
Need more Grok Talk? Well, you can catch new shows Saturday mornings from 9 to 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Miss a show? Not a problem. Past shows are rebroadcast here daily from 9 to 11 a.m. Monday through Friday. Join us for 2 hours of unapologetic conservatism. And we're not just armed with opinions.
2, 1.
We'd like to welcome you to another edition of Grok Talk, brought to you by New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GraniteGrok.com. We are your feared extremist, right-wing, hard-charging, gun-toting, opinionated, outspoken, rabble-rousing, letter-writing, radio microphone stomping conservatives and rational libertarians. So get ready for more news and opinion you could only get from GraniteGrok.com.
Grok Talk.
The world is full of amusing things, and this is one of those amusing things. So please tell us this is real. This is not a parody.
This is absolutely real, and I'm sure some of you two, some Groksters and many listeners are familiar with a bunch of lawyers out of Minneapolis, St. Paul, who write under the group name Powerline. And they do all sorts of things, politics, science, really, really interesting stuff. Well, was there this morning looking around, because Saturdays they always have their really great cartoons, political cartoons, on Powerline. But I saw this headline. This is what they call Tales from the Ivory Tower. It's a regular post. It says, Academic Gibberish Watch, we have another winner. And this abstract is taken from a journal named Progress in Human Geography. And the title of this abstract is Glaciers, Gender and Science, a Feminist Glaciology Framework for Global Environmental Change Research. And the abstract says, glaciers are key icons of climate change and global environmental change. However, the relationships among gender, science, and glaciers, particularly related to epistemological questions about the production of glaciological knowledge, remain understudied. This paper thus proposes a feminist glaciological framework with 4 key components. 1, knowledge producers. 2, gendered science and knowledge. 3, systems of scientific domination. And 4, alternate representations of glaciers, merging feminist post-colonial science studies and feminist political ecology. The feminist glaciological framework generates robust analysis of gender, power, and epistemologies in dynamic social ecological systems, thereby leading to a more just and equitable science and human ice interactions. Now, they passed along the New Hampshire legislature last year that banned bestiality. Now, whether they banned human ice interactions, I'm not sure. That being said, the boys at Powerline say, yeah, I too was sure this was a parody, but in fact the lead author is the associate dean at the University of Oregon. He says, well, do they really sit around and say, gee, the gender of that glacier is uncertain to me. It might be a trans-glacier, perhaps reversing course in the next cycle. We'll have to cross-reference it with my post-colonial epistemology thesaurus. Why not? Notice a recent Paris Agreement on climate change that has, among other nonsense, this paragraph. Acknowledging that climate change is a common concern of humankind. Parties should, when taking action to address climate change, respect, promote, and consider their respective obligations on human rights, the right to health, the right of indigenous peoples, local communities, migrants, children, persons with disabilities, and people in vulnerable situations, and the right to development, as well as gender equality, empowerment of women, and intergenerational equity. Now, the money quote here is the boys at Powerline to end it with this sentence. It says, this is why you get Trump.
And I think they're right. You know, a couple of things.
And not that I have a problem with Trump, but what sort of unbelievable crap on a cracker is this? How do you tell the gender of a glacier? Do you pick it up and turn it over?
What I want to know is how do you establish trigger warnings for trans glaciers when the environmentalists start talking about how they're receding?
Exactly, but this human ice interaction has me very troubled.
It does. Well, it's always been said that feminazis are ice queens.
There you go. I hadn't considered that. I think you're
and
right.
from a very old folk song, a thing's a phallic symbol if it's longer than it's wide. So glaciers are symbols of male oppression. So this is why we got this feminazi transgender
not if
glacier
they're
study
female
group.
glaciers. See, that's the whole thing. What
They
gender
may
are they?
They may simply identify.
Or they may identify. Correct. Right.
They may. But how do you know? Are there tests?
And would it be legal or illegal for them to dip into the wrong ocean?
Indeed. They could. Yeah, what oceans can we... But don't they all sort of merge at some point? Don't they all join hands and get along?
And a big
I mean,
genderless sea.
Right. I was down in South Africa winding up a project tour down there and was down on the Cape, and there's a point there at the Cape of Good Hope where the Atlantic and the Indian Ocean meet, right?
Very turbulent, I believe.
Looked very peaceful. It was...
Okay.
The colors were different, but you probably can't say that. But there was a marker, and so I stuck my toe in one and then the other and was able to bring my toe back safely. But apparently there are lines of demarcation in whether glaciers can absorb different oceans. Are oceans gendered? I don't know. How can a glacier have a gender if an ocean isn't gendered? What?
You need a grant to study this. Mm-hmm. You should apply for a grant for this. I bet you could fund your entire operation with a grant on whether or not the gender of oceans.
You might be able to. Maybe these trans-glaciers qualify for expanded Medicaid.
They might.
They might. I mean, you get $701.53 a month for your insurance.
You get the same amount of money for receding Medicaid because there is no receding Medicaid.
That is correct. So I think that that whoever this person is, really, their mother needs to take them by the ear, put them in a timeout, and beat the crap out of them.
This is what you get with those courses.
Exactly.
What? I don't even know. How do you become an expert in that? You just get a certificate from an island nation, and then you're an expert on glacial gender studies.
It's just off the charts.
It's
silly.
Absurd.
But here's what's silliest and tragic, is the fact that a dean at a university,
associate dean to be sure,
can write a course outline that is so transparently specious.
Can you say transparent? Are there transparents?
There are transparents, yes.
Yeah. And are they allowed to adopt?
And what do they think about this whole glacier thing?
They might. I think
they might. But it's so transparent.
They could adopt a glacier.
So transparently specious. And
specious or species?
And facetious. In the reasonable expectation of getting government money to fund his course. Doesn't that say just how sad and corrupt and totally out of control our entire government apparatus is, that a university would even propose such a course? And is this, in fact, more corrupt than Trump University? At least you got taught a valuable life lesson there.
Feminist glaciology framework. Is it whalebone?
Feminist glaciology framework. There you go.
What is that framework?
It wouldn't be whalebone because they don't believe in bras.
You're right.
Feminist.
You're right. I didn't think about that
framework.
Yeah, I don't even know what that means. And somebody thinks this is.
I've got something that I would like to call a conservative bullshitology framework.
This has four authors.
So they've got all the genders covered.
We, the people, are paying those idiots to produce this stuff, for which we will then pay them more money.
Well, and then when the people who majored in this can't find a job, we'll be paying for them.
Exactly.
And the only way they're going to find a job, if they do, will be working for the government, which means we'll be paying for them.
And then they'll be like buggy whips because there won't be any more glaciers.
Right.
This is a dead end study. See, if glaciers are really going away, there's no framework.
They shouldn't fund this.
This is just nonsense.
I think it's oppressive though.
It is.
Trans-glaciers.
We should send this. Well. We should send this to Al Gore for approval, and he'll say,
"Well, if there's trans-glaciers, there must be trans-sea ice."
There must be. Trans-rain. How do you get glaciers? Right?
Snow, rain, right. Weather.
Trans-snow. But they are all unique.
They are.
They are all unique.
The ultimate test of liberal lunacy would be to run this by Al Gore for approval. And if he was honest about anything, he'd then say, there's no point in studying this because I've predicted there will be no more glaciers by next year.
But you know,
but he won't. He'll approve. If put to the test, Gore would be wholeheartedly, enthusiastically in support of this because it's all more government money laundering.
And I'll bet Joe Biden would back it because he'd be happy to check those genders.
Oh, yes, he would.
Put his hands on the glacier shoulders.
That's right. Grope those glaciers.
Yeah.
Creepy.
Wow.
Creepy.
I mean, truly, this is why we can't have nice things.
Creepy Joe Biden. Right. And this is a priority to somebody.
Of course it is.
Of your money. Let's talk, forget roads and bridges, forget mental health wait lists, forget whatever it is they do with the money they pilfer from the alcohol abuse fund and so on and so forth. But we need to fund this.
But this is in fact government in a microcosm. I know the university is not in itself government per se, but essentially what you've got is you've got some scum that's risen to the top, that's floating on the water, that is in charge at this university. And it thinks itself to be so important, it can dream up any stupid idea and have the people pay for it. And that is exactly how government works at all levels. The idiots rise to the top and they propose stupid stuff and they all clap themselves on the back and say, the idiots, the sheep will all go along with this. We'll fleece them one more time.
Well, apparently that's what's going on. But I was unaware.
But don't the fleeced sheep will get cold on the glacier?
It's unclear. But
depends on what gender they are.
Did you know that there was feminist post-colonial science studies? I don't even know what that means.
Feminist post-colonial.
Post-colonial.
Why isn't there feminist pre-colonial science studies?
I don't know. Maybe there weren't feminists then. I don't know. But I find this
the rise and fall of the American Republic. We created this framework for the freest and most prosperous nation on earth, and we became prosperous. And lo and behold, people had time and money to waste, and they learned how to steal from everybody else. And so the decline began. And now you have trans-glacier studies by post-colonial scientists.
Post-colonial feminist scientists. Thank you very much.
Oh, that's right.
Well, since we're gonna try this whole music on the break off the phone thing again, just to keep us editorially relevant. To keep us post-production
chronologically
separated, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know if it's
going to work.
Separate but equal. Separate but equal. Equal but equal. Okay, hang on. This might work. It might not. Stay with us.
This is a coalition of New Hampshire taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is the repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested, riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at gerardatlarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
What did you say on the break?
I said, this may be this.
Oh, you said you can't do that with marbles.
Oh, you can't do that with marbles. You cannot do that with marbles. But I think I know where the guy got the marbles he used because these people have obviously lost things.
That's an excellent point. And to that end, let's talk about the next thing where there's some people who've lost their marbles. I'm going to go navigate back to the post.
Rhode Island?
To Rhode Island, as I go past the picture of the toast with Ben Carson on it.
Hang on. You.
Oh, it's right here. Thank you so much. Okay, so anyway, the Rhode Island State Senate passed a bill making tree debris a form of vandalism. If you go to some of the links, if you follow them, you will actually see the statute is written under the vandalism statute, criminal statute, okay? The Rhode Island State Senate passed a bill Tuesday that would require homeowners to prune their shrubbery and trees or face a $500 fine if plant litter lands on someone else's property. Senators voted 26-6 to pass a bill that would require homeowners to maintain and control any debris created by a tree or shrub if it causes a nuisance to an abutting property owner. So this is just too funny. I mean, honestly.
Tree debris.
Tree debris. So they tried to pass this last year, and it failed in the House.
So anytime the wind blows and some twigs snap off or something a little larger, you got to go around and bag it and tag it on your neighbor's lawn.
So this guy, let's see where here, he actually says the bill's sponsor, Democratic Senator Frank Ciccone, said he introduced the legislation after listening to concerns about pine trees from residents in his Silver Lake district of Providence. Pine trees are nice in the forest, nice in certain areas, but they shed these pine needles and sap on adjacent vehicles and driveways. Silver Lake is this rundown, basically low-income neighborhood. There is a portion of a lake abutting it, very, very small section. And so I'm just thinking, what's he thinking? Who really is complaining about trees and pine needles? And this is crazy. Well, we have this here. We have this kind of nonsense in New Hampshire, too.
Sure.
We have things like, what did I write down? Cell phone bans, Medicaid expansion. Those are crazy ideas, right?
Bestiality, don't forget that.
We also have nipple bills, wood smoke, all manner of things that people come up with. And
Think of the money they could raise from tree debris in New Hampshire.
Well, I know, and so I'm wondering what the gig is here. In my legislative utopia, workers take a week or two to make sure that the state has a minimal budget to operate, and then it's back to the fields or bustling internet startup, local eatery, or whatever. Sure, you'd be around the district more, and that will always lend itself to probing questions from constituents about needing the legislature to do something about this or that. But with so little time to work at the Capitol, only the most necessary proposals would have time for any sort of hearing. This would drive the lunatics to seek solace in the warm embrace of more local government, where stupid has to stand up next to its neighbors and explain why the town needs to find people when pine needles from a tree 3 generations older than anyone in the room finds their way to someone's property for the umpteenth year in a row, thanks to gravity, wind, or whatever. It's crazy.
The poor saps are getting needled, obviously.
That's right. Speaking of crazy, did anyone on the island of Rhode consult the tree huggers about this? Rhode Island must have its fair share of fair trade latte drinking, Birkenstock-wearing, Whole Food shopping environmentalists. How do they feel about the state essentially mandating a delimbing of hundreds of thousands of trees by residents looking to avoid being fined for every coniferous clam jam-free that takes place on their neighbor's lawn?
Oh, I like that. Well,
that was a good rant, Steve, with lots of great words.
It just keeps going. Go read it. It's funny, and it's weird when you write you write what interests you, because otherwise it's no fun.
Exactly.
And it becomes a job, and since we're not getting paid, what the hell? Why do that, right? And somebody John Burt posted a link to the bill, and a snippy little quote from somebody who was making fun of basically that because it's stupid. And I started writing about it, and all these ideas start popping up in your head, and then the next thing you know, I'm looking for words like clam jamfrey.
Clam jamfrey, I love that. That's a wonderful word.
I'm going to have to look that up.
You will. It's a Scottish word. You won't find it in a regular dictionary. But if you go to Wikipedia, I think you can find the link through Wikipedia to. Actually, just search the definition. You'll eventually get to it. It means a lot of things. It's a good word because it also means a crowd of rabble.
Yeah, you didn't read it from get it from Bill O'Reilly.
No, I did not. I don't watch Bill O'Reilly.
You're far more erudite than he is.
Thanks. So, but it has a lot of negative connotation to a crowd or herd or collection of something undesirable.
I like it.
So it worked.
Could it be
barely.
a legislature?
It could be a clam jam-free, yes. I think legislature could be a clam jam-free.
We call it something else in Texas, but it starts with the same letter.
There's also clan jam-free, which is the same word, but just more of its original derivation.
Well, if Scotland gets its independence, maybe they'll have one.
So anyway, Rhode Island is proposing this, and I'm thinking, it's a windfall for tree people. Somebody's got to have it in,
Oh, which is why Bert posted
right.
it.
I called
well,
it.
There you go.
I think Senator
John
Frank
thinks he's
Ciccone has big wood in his pocket, if you get my meaning. Because all of these tree guys are going to go out there, and they're going to have to trim off half the trees and cut down branches. Big wood in his pocket. And he's going to get all this money. And so there must be tree lobbyists somewhere lobbying the legislature to advance legislation that will allow them to make a windfall of profits to prevent windfall from blowing debris onto somebody else's yard.
We have the New Hampshire timber owners.
And then they'll tax it, and then they'll get money either way.
You'll have some very oddly shaped trees if you're trying to avoid the sap needling the poor neighbors.
Well, I originally was going to make a change. I was going to change the Rhode Island state flag, which is just a ring of stars with an anchor in the middle of it. And I was going to take that out and have half a tree.
Nice.
So I started working on that, and then I kind of got distracted.
Did you ever travel on Fruit Street in Concord a couple of years ago when the whole brouhaha over trees falling during the ice storms?
Oh, yes.
And the damage, and some knucklehead, probably with administrative services, there was a lovely row of a fairly mature some type of spruce or something, beautifully shaped, and they had gone along Fruit Street, north to south, on the east side of the road, and done exactly what you said, cut them in half. So I guess the limbs wouldn't fall on things.
Half of Fruit Street.
Half of Fruit Street. Absolutely the worst looking thing you ever saw. And I don't know, maybe a month or so later, I noticed that all those had been taken down.
It's interesting because somebody had tried to pass legislation that would require a setback from wires, above ground wires, of trees, like 30 feet or some guy. I mean,
there already is.
I know, but there wasn't, and so any trees that were near power lines, they wanted to cut back a certain number of distance, and I'm like, well, you might as well just cut them all down because there's so many damn trees in the state, anywhere near a street. Right, you're going to just basically have this strip.
Well, believe it or not, and I know many people are not fans, including Jim Rubens, are not fans of the old power companies. But public service, when it was public service, and the others, have within their companies arborists. Mm-hmm. And their job is to ensure that trees and power lines do not...
mix.
They are not in some sort of glaciological framework, but when we had that horrible ice storm, and so many limbs came down on power lines, there was a huge move afoot to completely change how the utilities manage their tree trimming operations. And they come through every couple of years and trim the errant branch here and there. Mm-hmm. Well, the funny thing is, all of a sudden, all the smart set, the ruling class, decided that they didn't want it to apply to, what do they call them, scenic roads, where their properties are out in horse country or wherever, and they've got these lovely old elm trees or maple trees or oak trees that cross the road and provide this beautiful shade cover. No, they didn't want the power companies to have any right to cut those trees down because they were pretty, and they added to the property value. So there was a big fight, and the general
and they can afford the generator that they will inevitably need because the trees will fall on the power lines.
Yeah, but
they'll do it beautifully.
Believe it or not, the arborists at the utility companies kind of knew what they were talking about, and if you ever went through any of the literature in their tariffs and their programs, that they have a very decided practice of working with homeowners when they do go to trim trees.
I always get a postcard before they show up, saying, would you like to opt into this?
Yes, and there is within the statute when someone's trees hang over into the public right-of-way where the poles are actually placed, mm-hmm. That they could, if they wished, truly take your tree down. And there's nothing you can do about it. But where we live, they came through several years ago because many properties on the state road where we live had never been developed and power lines were new coming to that part of the town. Mm-hmm. There were lots of really old trees and whatnot. They came through with a great program, and for those people where they did, in fact, clear trees and expose what you thought was private cover for your driveway or whatever, they came through with great programs and planted hemlocks and other slower growing dense trees to compensate, and it was quite reasonable. But pine sap and pine needles, I guess, are so offensive in Rhode Island that they need legislation to manhandle it. So another reason not to move.
Maybe they should transplant themselves to become a southern state.
You can't say transplant.
Could have trans maples.
Rhode Islanders say transplant. If you live in Rhode Island,
Cynthia Chase is a transplant from Rhode Island.
Yeah, if you live in Rhode Island and you were not born there, you could have moved there the day after your birth. You're a transplant for the rest of your life. That's Rhode Island terminology.
Well, I've only been there a couple of times, and I didn't much care for it. But it was so, by the time you blink, you're out of it anyway. So who cares? I'm from Texas. We have gas stations on the interstate that are bigger than Rhode Island.
And did you try any of Mayor Cianci's cuisine?
Who?
Buddy Cianci, the guy who was in charge a couple of times and in jail once.
I recognize the name.
Yeah.
I recognize the name. He was Rhode Island?
He was actually into cooking, so you got jokes about Buddy Cianci's marinara sauce, now available in the can.
Did he cook books?
He was charged with several sorts of corruption.
Okay.
Excellent.
Which in Rhode Island is, again, an integral part of government.
Well, it certainly seems to be coming that here in New Hampshire.
Oh, yeah.
Really disappointing. Yeah. You come here from somewhere else because of what you thought it represented or what you believe it represents. And
I'm beginning to think.
Well, we should start a poll. How long before our governors and speakers of our House end up going to jail for corruption? I mean, there's a timeline for this. It's been going on in Illinois for years. Massachusetts has a record, I think.
Well, I don't think anybody's objected before.
Speakers of the House.
I don't think anybody's objected before, Steve, all these folks coming from different places and the things that have gone on in New Hampshire, certainly this Metascam thing, all of a sudden you start looking at this and you go, what? And the people who've been, glad handing each other all these years and partners in activities, there is this tide of people moving to stop it. So how long does the containment last? I don't know, but at some point, somebody is going to complain, and somebody's going to have to pay attention. Probably not in my lifetime, but...
Well, yeah, you kind of wonder, My wife's like, where are we going to move? I'm like, well, probably Texas. But
well, my passport's good. I mean, I was born there, so...
Yeah,
I have to find work, but,
We do wonder whether Texas can manage to maintain its independence. It's got its own cronyism, at least, built into the government.
But when you look at the scale, okay, you can lose yourself in Texas. You can move somewhere amidst those millions and millions of people and find a place and be left alone. Here in New Hampshire, it's not so easy.
Right.
So, and Texas, for all of its whatever, the legislature meets every 2 years for 120 days.
Right.
And they get stuff done, and it works.
Yep.
So why can't we do that here?
Well, we've certainly talked about it, but, it's given where we are, the amount of progressivism we're surrounded by.
Yeah.
And you can include Canada. And the influx of Democrat immigrants.
Yes.
From these foreign lands across our borders and their influence on, these people come here and they get involved.
Yeah.
They come here to get involved. They come here to bring the poison from where they left to us. And they've been very good at it. And a lot of them run as Republicans in districts where they can't get elected any other way. And they get elected to school boards and committees and budget committees and everything else. And they just poison the water.
Well, there's this great animated movie called The The Incredibles.
I love that movie.
Mm-hmm. Love that movie.
Great music, too.
And the premise of the movie is that there was this world full of superheroes who made it their business anonymously to save people from trouble, to stop bad guys, to stop bad things from happening, and the population was grateful and thought they were wonderful. And then after a while, you get used to safety and you get used to having your you-know-what pulled out of the fire. And so maybe when the superhero came in and accidentally, banged up a building or a road or damaged somebody's car, people took offense to it and they decided to outlaw them. And some of these superheroes went into retirement and
hiding. They were relocated
and trying to have a normal life, and all of a sudden the world never gets rid of bad guys.
No.
And the good guys found themselves compelled to try and stop things. Well, there was this one bad guy who came out who had admired
Syndrome,
the superheroes, and wanted to get even because the superheroes didn't want him to get involved because he was little and he might hurt himself. Well, he had this great line in the movie that is so applicable. He said, when everybody's special, nobody is. Mm-hmm. And that's where we are. These people want nobody to be special. They don't want New Hampshire to be special.
Except for them. They want to be special.
Except for them, because...
they're little ruling class specialists.
Right. So if New Hampshire is no different economically, politically, or socially from Massachusetts or Maine or Vermont or New York, then if all states are the same, then you have no advantage to move somewhere else to vote with your feet.
Mm-hmm.
Happily, we can still vote with our feet. And those people who said, this is enough. I came here for a reason. The reason no longer exists, and I can't change it despite my best efforts. Bye-bye. So at what point does the population shrink to where you run out of money? Margaret Thatcher said, socialism is great until you run out of other people's money. And I think New Hampshire's sort of on that glide path.
I think since if all the Free Staters come, I'll give them a couple of years to see what they can do.
I think part of what's going on, and I'm sure there are black helicopters outside,
but listening.
Getting all of this
why there's no windows.
Jammed through, all of these horrible things passed into law to discourage. Certainly an income tax will discourage people from coming here.
Mm-hmm.
And what if this is why this is all happening? To stop those people who've come in and looked around and said, wait a minute, this is not right. This is not how you're supposed to live. If there's no reason to come here, if nobody's special.
All right, we're gonna go ahead.
What if Cynthia Chase is winning the battle?
She may be.
She kind of is right now.
She kind of is.
But you can always turn the tide as long as we can still talk and speak and vote, and there's a chance that we might be able to turn around. We're going to take another quick break here just for placeholders' sake, and we'll be right back to finish up the program.
This is the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is the repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now, at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested, riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at GerardAtLarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
Alrighty, that's enough of that for our little placeholderishness. Turn the microphones back.
We're back.
On. Grok Talk, brought to you by GraniteGrok.com and the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers. We are coming to you live, semi-live, trans-live.
From the Palatial Studios.
From the Palatial Studios in Concord, almost every week. Please check back for the podcast. Check us out on Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iTunes, and iHeartRadio. We are, of course, also on Ustream for a couple weeks till those cycle out, but sometimes we're on YouTube. The audio is on YouTube. When I post to Spreaker, the audio automatically goes to my YouTube page, Steve McDonald. So you can hear it there, or you can listen to it, like I said, on any of your mobile devices, anywhere, anytime you want. They're all there on the internet for you to fisk and parse and to aggravate you or enervate you as you see fit. So we're going to try to close up with some local news items. There's a lot of things that did happen this week. We pointed out a few of them. We had a Super Tuesday. There was a debate, and we had the union leader walked back its support from Christie, wiping its brow, going, wow, that was dumb. Ben Carson was almost out and then finally out. CPAC is going on this weekend. A year ago, I took the Trump bus to CPAC.
Did you?
I was on the Trump bus.
Wow.
Wow, that's nice.
And so my role was to go there, and I could get to be at CPAC. All I had to do was stand in the lobby when he came in and applaud, and
nice.
That was my job. And I did that, and then I went back to being at CPAC, which was cool. And I did call the show from CPAC.
I think I remember that.
Rare occasions when I
was
wasn't actually in the studio.
So isn't it curious that this year Trump decided at the last minute not to attend CPAC?
I
because
noticed that, yes.
Why would he? Why would
he
you
doesn't
go?
need to.
You know,
there's no reason for him to go.
There's no reason for him to go. They all hate his guts. All
those
they
aren't
do
his
is try and
voters.
pick
Yeah,
a fight.
those are not his voters.
Those are not his voters, and Kansas is looking a little edgy right now with Rubio and Cruz both holding big rallies in Kansas today. Trump decided that Wichita had more appeal than CPAC.
And he should. He should, because, I mean, his voters are, I think we've discovered, it's all about the ruling class thing. The reading and the newsread, that crap, it all leads to the point where people have said, and, Angelo Codavilla called it in 2010 when he said that the electorate that's not represented is going to get pissed off, and for good or bad, they are going to react. And this is them reacting. We have people who are conservatives, libertarians, solid right-wing Republicans who love Trump, and they don't care that you have no clue what he's going to do or where he's going to go. They just know that he is here to burn the party down, and they're happy to get behind him.
Yeah.
Matches in hand, torches and pitchforks. Let's
Absolutely.
go.
And burning the party down is fine, but the presidency of Trump may not be.
That's just the thing. And look at history.
Yeah.
We look at history. What predated all these other people who ended up being horrible? Or great, either way.
Yeah.
Either way.
People frustrated at their government and following a populist.
I mean, you could say you had Nixon in decline, you had Ford, who was nobody, you had Jimmy Carter, who was a reaction to that, which was awful, and then luckily we got Reagan. Okay, that's not always how it goes. Sometimes you start out with Bismarck, and you end up with a Hitler. And it doesn't start that way, and nobody plans it to be that way, but that's just how it rolls. And we've just had a very imperial presidency, okay, which has set a table, which almost anybody can sit down at now.
Yeah, I say often that be careful what your party permits or requests in the way of power to do things. Imagine the other guys with the same powers you just requested. Imagine, Obama has set this reckless agenda. He has made it so that he can do anything he wants with his pen and his phone. Now, as Steve says, anybody can come along and do that, and will probably get away with most of it. And that's downright scary. Obama's bad enough. Imagine what could be worse.
Well, if it's our guy.
Well, as long as our guy slashes and burns the government,
There's only one person who's going to do that.
We can safely say,
ain't Trump.
We can safely say that we, as for the most part, have no problem going after anybody because we base our actions and reactions on principles and values and a set morality, whereas we don't know what certain people's set moralities and principles are. I went after that guy in Oregon about the pedophile thing, and I would give Kyle Tasker no less quarter, because it's not about whether or not he's a good vote or a bad vote or whether or not he supports things I believe. It's the issue of the moral problem that I have with what he's doing. And so, people come to me and go, like, look, I've got close to 8,000 posts. You can go tell me where I have deviated, and I will be happy to address your concerns. And, of course, they're not going to do that, because who's going to look through 8,000 posts to find something? And they're not going to. They're not.
But you haven't deviated.
I haven't deviated because everything I do is based on a set of constitutional principles, Christian principles, rule of law, individual liberty.
Right and wrong.
There's evil in the world and there's good in the world, and I know the difference. And I'm not worried about trans-glacial feminism.
No,
so,
neither am I.
I have better things to focus on, like television shows that have no purpose but to entertain me. Those are more important.
Apocalypse. What a great show. What a great show. But the folks in Washington, truly, whether it's the president or senators or congressmen, don't give a damn about any of us.
No, they don't.
I mean, they trot through here and shake your hand and stick their hands in your wallet, and then they leave. And it isn't really going to matter. It's a question of the steepness of the slope, the steepness of the decline.
Yeah, how fast is that handbasket sliding down to hell?
Right, and New Hampshire doesn't really matter to anybody. It's only 1 million people. Our own senators don't give a damn about New Hampshire. The Congress people don't give a damn.
Yeah, they are not our senators.
Neither are the Congress people.
No, but especially the senators. Due to the 17th Amendment, the senators effectively always run national races. They think that they are a national legislative body. They think they are above and superior to the people of the individual states, who they just frankly don't care to represent. And that's why Kelly Ayotte is getting primaried. And we could wish there were more better people primarying, but you know what? I take my hat off for Jim Rubens to have the courage to stand.
Well, I would want to say that Stark 360, whether you like Rubens or not, has made a commitment to remove Kelly Ayotte from office.
Sure.
They have made a commitment to back Mr. Rubens because he's the candidate who's challenging her in the primary. Yes. And if he loses, they will spend gobs of money so that Andrew Hemingway can steal enough votes so she loses.
Right, and
now that's commitment to removing somebody from office who has failed to do any of the things they said when they ran.
And you know what's shocking? Again, I'm at the legislature all the time, and there was a
take
bill.
A lot of showers.
Oh. Hazmat suit, but there was a bill that was introduced that wouldn't repeal the death penalty per se. Okay, would suspend it. Until the evidence was absolutely clear that the person was guilty.
Not that we've ever actually used it in recent memory.
No. But if you're, it took me years to come to this position. But if you're pro-life, it's very difficult to justify being pro-death penalty. But this bill was fought tooth and nail to repeal the death penalty in New Hampshire, to even suspend it, because that's what got Kelly Ayotte elected, was putting some guy behind bars, getting the death penalty because he killed a policeman. Now, I'm not saying that killing a policeman is a good thing, all right? But staking out that you're tough on crime and running on the Senate on a death penalty win. And then once you get to Washington, turning into this mashed potato sandwich that absorbs anything that comes along.
And she joined the ruling class.
She joined the ruling class.
She became a junior partner in the Democrat Party, as Skip likes to say. She is what Codavia goes into detail. Again, American Spectator. American Spectator. Some people on the left would call it
We are
that.
the expectorate,
That's
right?
right. The expectorate electorate. We want you to go there and look for this ruling class. Angelo Codavia.
Or just,
and then he has a book.
Buy his little book.
Or you can buy his book, which is, 60, 90 pages, something like that. It's not very long.
160, I think. But it's
a wonderful
small.
But it's basically
It's a
just an
wonderful
expansion of the article.
Yes.
I shared the link to the American Spectator article with some friends of mine who've been having a debate about Trump voters and authoritarianism and some other things designed to scare people into thinking he's a Nazi. But I said, well, if you really want to know why this is happening, you need to read this article. It's like 18 pages, but you should read it. And then if you like that, you should go buy the book because it's cheap. You can get it on Kindle and Nook and just tear through it. And then you will have a completely, if you are willing to be open-minded, you will have a completely different perspective about yourself and your relationship to what happens in the government.
So, first of all, this is an uprising of populism. 20 years earlier, Buchanan very nearly rode that same wave of populism into the White House for very much the same reasons. The people were totally ticked off at D.C., and it's only gotten worse. And so, we can see this completely.
It's just nuts. So anyway, Kelly Ayotte does have a primary. Maybe
She's
somebody else.
Lose. She's going to lose the election.
She's going to lose. She can't beat Maggie Hassan. She never could, primary or not.
It doesn't matter. You could wipe out Stark 360. You could take away Jim Rubin's primary bid. You could take away Andrew Hemingway's threat of
Any one of us can tell you that everybody we talk to, none of them are going to vote for her.
Yeah, exactly. She's going to lose. I have responded to every request for money to help Kelly beat off Hassan with the same thing, which is bring me a candidate and then we'll talk about donations. Kelly is going to lose, guaranteed. It's only a question of at what stage. And Susan, you said something a little while ago that was particularly interesting about them coming through periodically, walking among us, shaking our hands, putting their hands in our pockets, and then going to D.C. and being something completely different. Kelly is absolutely the stereotype, the epitome of that. She walked amongst us in 2010 and tried to be a conservative. The mask was ripped off the first time McCain appeared alongside her. But she tried to appear to be a conservative. She said the right things. She met everybody. She went to every local GOP. She attended gatherings. And then she went to Washington. She didn't attend even the spiffy gatherings unless they were making money for her. She wouldn't show up for things like the Nashua Stakeout, which is a huge event every year. She wouldn't show up for major town party events, never mind small town party events. And all of a sudden this year, as doom is staring her in the face, she's starting to show up. Damn it, you may not be able to see, but we can see, Miss Ayotte, that it's a pure sham, and we're not buying it.
You know the difference between Kelly Ayotte and Maggie Hassan?
One's honest.
We know how Maggie Hassan will vote.
We do.
Yes.
We do. There's not going to be any surprises there. I may not like her politics, but I absolutely know how she's going to vote. Yeah. And on the rare occasion that she might pleasantly surprise me, that's great. I never am pleasantly surprised by Ms. Ayotte.
No, always disappointed. And
so we warned him. We warned him, and sometimes I bet
Ovid regrets to this day not demanding a recount.
This is taking the belt out and saying this is going to hurt me more than it's going to hurt you.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I had a conversation like this before the last state race. I was working with someone who was challenging an incumbent Republican, alleged Republican, and I sat down with one of the local party.
That wasn't booting out the boot in, was it?
I was sitting down with a local party leader, and explaining why we were challenging an incumbent Republican. And the person said to me, well, we need that vote. And I said, no. I said, there are a lot of people like us out there that believe in small government, that believe in limited government, that believe in personal liberty, and that we are willing to burn the party down. He says, but you know what? He says, do you have any idea how long it would take to rebuild? And I said, well, if it could be rebuilt, probably a decade. I said, but that's not the point. The point is that this is not acceptable behavior. And rather than live in uncertainty in your elected officials, know for sure what they're going to do.
That's why crony capitalism works.
Of course it does.
You go out and you okay.
Them
so
votes don't buy themselves.
Campaign finance laws.
Yeah.
We're going to stop these companies and these businesses and these rich individuals from investing in these super PACs so that they can say what they think about an issue or a politician. Instead, we're going to encourage them to send lobbyists to Washington, D.C., where we're not going to see a damn thing they do, and they're going to have just as much influence, if not more.
If not more.
Retards.
The Senate hearing was, the House Finance Committee was populated by lobbyists.
Those people,
period, stop.
Those people are paying taxes. They're going to get taxed. They want control over how they get taxed.
Yes.
And if they can go down and control how they get taxed and predict how they get taxed, they can operate in the marketplace that's created for them.
Yes.
So I am going to kind of close here with an appeal to our listeners. Miss Susan has made a request of me which I've been unable to fulfill. We want to take a LaChance on Rick. On Joe LaChance. The problem is there's precious few good pictures out there. There's a full-face grayscale picture and a fairly poor color picture. I need a sort of half or three-quarter profile of Joe LaChance in color, any reasonable size that you found from an event, from a blog, from a newspaper.
Mugshot.
It has to be at least partly.
Just threatened to expose me, and I want to be prepared.
Yes, he's going to expose you.
He's threatened me.
At least partly turned, because we have a target picture that we want to fit his face into. And I don't have enough to work with.
Yeah.
And so in order for me to fulfill my obligation to the lovely Miss Susan here and to...
and you want to do that.
Yeah. and to make a little fun, to take a LaChance on Joe, I need a good picture. So, folks, you don't like Medicaid expansion. You don't like the cronyism that is actually making our hospitals more expensive than they need to be. You got a good picture of LaChance? I'd like it, please.
All right, that's our cue.
Wow, it goes so fast.
We got through it. If you've watched this on Grok Talk, thank you. We will have a podcast up for you in a couple of hours. So thank you very much. Everybody have a great day. We'll be back next week with Power Chords.
Indeed.
And audio stream. So we'll see you.
Need more Grok Talk? Well, you can catch new shows Saturday mornings from 9 to 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Miss a show? Not a problem. Past shows are rebroadcast here daily from 9 to 11 a.m. Monday through Friday. Join us for 2 hours of unapologetic conservatism. And we're not just armed with opinions.
Rock Talk.
This is a coalition of New Hampshire taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is a repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested, riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at gerardatlarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
Some of the content on this program is shared under the fair use provision of U.S. copyright law, found free in the public domain, or covered under Attribution 3.0. Some of the music on this program is provided by Kevin MacLeod at Incompetech.com. The opinions expressed on this program are those of the speakers and not necessarily those of CNHT, GraniteRock.com, this station, or anyone else for that matter. From the CNHT studios in Concord, New Hampshire, just a few blocks from the New Hampshire State House, this is
Rock Talk.